Hey, Chris Liepe here. We're talking about loudness in this video. How loud is your voice? How loud is my voice? And is loudness something that we need to be concerned about? Or is it something we just kind of roll with and let happen? Or could it be an indicator that there's something not quite right with the way we're using support? I got this incredible comment/question suggestion the other day. Hey, could you put a decibel meter in one of your lessons and we can see how loud you are from, when you're talking or when you're singing high, using mixed voice, screaming, singing lowly. Like what's the volume? What's the loudness difference between what you're doing? And loaded with this question is, what should it be? Or does it matter? Or is this, all these things that kind of go into dialing in our own feel and our own sound. So I've got a decibel meter in the room and I'm recording or displaying the loudness in the room. So it's not the loudness going into the mic. What you're hearing is a very leveled, curated dynamic sound so that it doesn't, it gives you a little bit of a break when it comes to all the different things that I do vocally, and you don't have to adjust your volume control all the time when you're singing or when you're listening. But what you're going to be seeing is what's happening in the room. I should also say that your room does have a big part to play when it comes to measuring loudness. If you've got lots of reflections, if you don't have a well-treated room, or if you're outside where the sound dissipates, or if you're in a huge room where the sound dissipates, the readings are going to be different. So what we're looking at here is relative, right? I'm going to clock well over 100 dB when I'm loud, but if I were in a bigger room, even though this room's treated, it probably wouldn't show up that loud. I also have positioned the dB meter as a listener would hear it, as opposed to like right next to my mouth. So it's just a little bit, well, you can see it. It's right here. So someone who might be listening to me would be maybe a little farther away than that, but that's all right. This will work. And before we get into doing some experimenting and explaining, if you'd like to take your voice to the next level and truly free it, you're going to see me get extremely loud, and it's not going to hurt my voice. There's a lot of potential for volume, aggressiveness, dynamics in our voices. If you want to unlock that in your own voice, I encourage you to click the link below and join my free vocal course. I'd also be curious, this is just a simple phone app. In the comments below, how loud are you getting when you're doing some of the same sounds that I'm getting? It'd be interesting to run a bit of a comparison there to see what other people's voices are displaying when they're going through a dB meter. Now, I'm running A-weighted, and I've got a moderate response time on there. So it's going to take a nice average over a relatively short period of time. So my noise floor is right around 27 dB, which is pretty quiet. It's pretty cool. Now, when I'm talking, just regularly talking, I'm clocking in at mid-60s, 70s. Hey, when I'm doing this, hey, what are you doing over there? 80s. That's just normal talking. In my normal speech voice, I'd probably talk about like this if I was just having a normal conversation, and that's going to be somewhere in the area of 60s. It's pretty good. Pretty, I think, standard. Now, and I've done this before where I've gone out into louder environments and measured my talking, and man, I end up talking like this, and that's kind of my shout conversation if I'm trying to talk in a large restaurant or whatever. And that's a good, 5, 6, 7, 10 dB hotter, My voice isn't going to last long if I'm talking like this. So it's kind of nice to have these references. Now let's get into some singing. Normal, well-supported chest voice. Normal, well-supported chest voice. There's some nice belting. There's some nice belting in my chest voice. And then if I go to head voice and down, now that's pure head. I wouldn't consider that to be a mix. That's pure head. It's a well-supported head voice, but I'm not adding that mixed support like we've talked about in my other videos. Yeah, head voice. So I can get my dynamics level between a well-supported head and a well-supported chest right around 90. That's a neat thing to be able to experience and discover. Even without mixing, I don't have a ton of variance, or I don't need to have a ton of variance. This makes it easier to record. This makes it easier to deliver live. And what it's showing is that I'm able to use compression in my singing to moderate airflow to create the feeling of more intensity without necessarily getting that much louder. Now, let's experiment more with compression. This is a note with very little compression. Now I'm adding more compression. Now I'm adding more compression. Now I'm adding more, less compression. So the more intense vocal actually is less in the dB meter. Now I'm adding more compression, and it's getting quieter, but I could add more push. Now I'm adding more, now I'm gonna stay on that same note. Now I'm adding more compression. Above the larynx, right? We don't want to go below. Now I'm adding more grit. It's actually quieter. Isn't that cool? I think it's cool. I think it's freeing. Because once we really start dialing this stuff in and experimenting, we start to understand that it's not all about just pushing harder. Let's go to some higher notes. Head voice, head, let's go in the mix, yeah! This is where it gets loud. When I go into supported mix, even without any grit, well, especially without any grit, it's the loudest I ever see on the dB meter. Even louder, I'd say, than all out, like screams. And this is partly due to the frequencies. I have a very forward belted mix placement, that ball of energy. I've also got this idea that I'm projecting frequencies that are very sensitive to dB meters, but also to the ears. This bright 2 to 4K sound that, you know, you have to really watch it if you're in the room or even if you're in recording this. Yeah! Your ears are designed to pick up on those frequencies, and they can hurt. But even as the dB meter jumps, yeah! In some cases 20 dB when I'm doing this, I do not feel like I am pushing as much as this note. Yeah! Well-supported belt! Well-supported chest belt! I'm actually pushing harder! I'm moving more air. I'm not using much compression. I'm actually moving more air in my chest. Yeah, 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 yeah. A lot of people never get past that point where they're just belting and they're moving a ton of air, but they're actually not that loud. Whereas I can actually move less air and I have more air held back there. And we've talked about this before, that there is an element of compression that helps you attain a good mix. That helps you create this more aggressive, higher, more present sound without having to use a ton of air. So you're seeing that things aren't quite what you might expect. It's not necessarily that as I sound more aggressive, I actually get louder, or as I get higher, I get louder, or as I get higher, I use more air. That's not the case. And the dB meter is showing this. Let's do a few more things and you can watch, and I'll continue to walk us through what I experience versus what we're seeing on the meter. I never liked you anyway. I never liked you anyway. Full belt. Yeah. Some grit, some compression-based distortion. Yeah, never liked you anyway. I never liked you anyway. So the dB meter didn't change a whole lot. In fact, in one instance, it actually drew back just a little bit when I initially added that compression. Cool. So it's consistent with what we've been seeing. More. Yeah, I never liked you anyway. I never liked you anyway. I never liked you anyway. Anyway. 106, 107. Anyway. About the same level. Anyway. So, what's interesting is that when I'm belting here, I am putting the most effort from support, from an airflow perspective, into that middle, upper belted chest note. And if I were to sing like that for a long time, I'd get tired and I would run out of air quickly. But by adding a little bit of compression, I actually come up with a more compelling sound, and I'm a little bit quieter. And then it actually helps me reserve energy and potential for when I go high. When I go high. And that, even though it's louder, there's an element of, well, you can see it on my face. It turns red, and I'm clearly intense, right? But there's not this feeling that I am going to lose it altogether. It's not a ton more effort as I'm introspecting, as I'm evaluating how I feel. It's not a ton more effort for the amount of decibels up that it ends up being. But what I find fascinating is this idea that we can project more energy, particularly with compression, without actually being louder, and in some cases, we're quieter. I hope this has been beneficial for you. Thank you so much for the special request. This was a great idea. If you'd like to take your voice further, again, be sure to click the link below and join my free vocal course. I lay the foundation for doing some of the things that you heard me do. Freedom, vocal freedom, compression, true dynamics, confidence. All that is in my free course. Be sure to leave requests and comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you like what you're seeing. We'll see you for more.